Hey everybody, Mike from Undiscovered Classics back here, and we are back at the Monroe Building here in Buffalo. This is a project that I was able to play a part in, along with some of my real estate development partners who are all much smarter than I am when it comes to the financial side of things. I'm just the design and history guy on the project. This was built in 1920 as the Monroe Motor Car Showroom and Dealership, and Charles Monroe was the founder of the Monroe Motor Car Company. He sold Marmon and Velis, which were luxury vehicles. They didn't last very long. They both, I think, died out just around or before the Great Depression. And then Monroe lost the building in bankruptcy in 1929, and Ford came into the picture in 1932, and they actually used it as a prototype for their concept for what we now know as a full-service dealership. So they did new car sales, used car sales, service, parts sales, everything that you've kind of come to expect of a modern dealership. But that was pretty groundbreaking in 1932, which is part of the reason why it's so historic. In 1976, this building had been covered over by corrugated metal until we purchased the building. We did some investigations during our due diligence period to see how much of the historic building still was under here. Unfortunately, anything that stuck out from the front, the cornice, upper and lower cornice, all had been sliced off. We were able to faithfully recreate that from historic photos and from historic drawings. The building's just completed an $8.5 million restoration, and we're all super excited that not only is the project done, but it actually looks this beautiful. So it now houses several commercial tenants. We're going to give you a tour of those in a minute here, including our anchor tenant in the showroom, which is Saffron Kitchen. They just opened up for their soft opening this past week. They have Turkish, Persian, and Afghan food. We're going to see some of the other commercial spaces and then the 17 apartments. And lastly, before we go take a tour of the building, I just want to give a shout out to everybody who has been a longtime follower of the channel and the new subscribers. We've picked up about 2,000 people in the last month, which is super exciting. And just wanted to remind those that have been watching the channel but haven't subscribed yet, if you could just hit that subscribe button, it helps a lot. When Ford acquired the building, this is the former parts department. This was a fun find, the old neon sign that was hiding underneath boards for decades. Unfortunately, not hooked up to anything anymore, and the T is a little bit crooked, but decided to keep it in place anyway as a cool remnant. It fits the 1940s glass block update that happened in this bay, along with this original door, which still has the sticker for Dowdell Lincoln Mercury Comet on it, when Comet was its own brand for a little while, not just a make of Ford. So put a proper storefront back in here. Try to line this up. I want to see if I can get it almost exactly as we had in that great 1936 photo. The upper cornice had all been ripped off. We've got the original wood windows up there that have been restored. The cornice has been made out of, I think, GFRC, so glass fiber reinforced concrete. This lower cornice we had good photos of, in addition to having some ghost lines on the brick, which we were generally able to match. In the used car showroom, we have Architect for Men, which is a barber shop. He's got his great vintage barber pole up there. Looks like he's got some folks hanging out in there. Then we make our way to the courtyard, which is completely full for our commercial tenants. At the far end of the Monroe Building, we have this building that was once separate but now connected internally. This is known as the main garage building. It's 2 stories at the front, the long 1 story at the rear. So this was where the people that ran the shop in this space for decades lived above the shop. The original storefront configuration on the first floor had been changed a few times, garage doors and storefront. So we ended up going with this fixed simulated garage door. So this is actually just a solid wall on the inside. It does not open up. We put some clear story windows in there to give the look of a garage door. And you've got this great solid wall on the inside of the apartment where you can hang things. And as this tenant is done, they put a bunch of plants in the window. I needed to come back at night just to give you guys an idea of what this looks like all lit up. All of the specificity we had with putting the lights into the cornice and just kind of the whole jewel box effect that happens at night here. So got the downlights highlighting the terracotta tiles between those little columns between the clear stories. Here's the space everyone's been waiting for, including us here at the development team, the former showroom of the Monroe Building. All restored back to its 1920 glory, or as close as we could get it based on what we had left, and historic photos, historic drawings, all of those good things. The chandeliers are modern, but they do well to fit the space.
Unfortunately, the original chandeliers, which were these kind of oblong chain type fixtures, were long gone and weren't hiding anywhere in the space. So these were a good close second that seemed period appropriate. Those casement windows up there were long gone, but we replicated them based on a historic photo that we had so that we could separate the office space from the restaurant area so that we could keep the sound separation at bay between the two spaces a little bit better. All the plaster has been restored, including all of the original clear story windows up there. All of the ductwork is hiding above the ceiling up there, which is concealed by these seamless flush mounted vents that are painted to match the ceiling, which was no small task because there's a lot of steel up there that required a lot of navigating around and not a lot of room to actually get a technician up there to crawl around. Here's another view where you can kind of get a better idea of what it took to separate the showroom from the upper and lower mezzanine area. We utilized this highly glazed wall system, which is set back behind the archway so that if for whatever reason the two spaces wanted to become merged again in the future, it's easily reversible, which is always the goal in preservation. This is one of the features that we're most proud of, which is a recreation of the original mural that existed. As you might remember from the previous video, this had actually been almost completely covered in paint, and during COVID, since there was nothing better for us to do, we actually started taking small razor blades, started chipping the paint away to reveal about 85% of the mural overall. Unfortunately, it just wasn't in a condition that was going to fit our budget for conservation. We had a professional come in and take a look at it, and just a back of the napkin estimate was about $50,000, which just wasn't in the budget. I mean, our budget was blown pretty early in this project. We still wanted to have this feature in here, so one of my other development partners, Travis, had the great idea of replicating it by using generative AI to fill in the areas where the paint wasn't coming off because it was bringing the actual mural with it. And so we worked with a local company, Zoom Copy Buffalo, and we took high resolution photos of the entire mural in sections. They paired that with a great interior photo we had from the 40s, which had another level of detail that we weren't able to get from the paint removal work that we did. And using the generative AI tool and then going in and making some manual adjustments, this is what we ended up coming out with. And one of the things that's really fantastic about it is because it's based on photos of the mural, it still has a lot of that cracking in the oil painting sensation, but it's all printed on vinyl, which if I hadn't told you, you probably would have thought this was the original mural if you'd walked into the space. The murals on the other walls, unfortunately, were so sun-baked that there was nothing we could do like we could on this wall. Everything was taken down, wrapped in glassine, put away safely in archival tubes. They're stored here on site. I doubt we'll find the funds to be able to fully conserve them, but at least at some point in the future, that opportunity will still exist. I'd venture a guess the cars depicted were probably a Marmon and a Veely. And here's Javed, the owner and head chef here at Saffron, as we're standing in what used to be the parts department. And Javed will remember that as I was joking with him, since he and his family did a lot of the build out here, I said that if they can cook half as good as they can restore this space, they'll be in good shape. And having had their food several times, they did an outstanding job on both. So do come and give them a visit. The food is fantastic. Unlike the showroom, there weren't a lot of architectural features in the parts department building except for this tin ceiling that was over the parts counter, which we're able to save a segment of here so that everybody who comes in to grab takeout can actually still see it. Commercial space 7, which is partially the service area, which is this is the dividing wall for it. And now we're underneath the mezzanine, which is now home to the law offices, urban planning firm, co-working office space. So you can see those plaster details from the showroom spill into here. This is, I think this still has it in here. This should be a cedar closet. Yes, and some old record theater signage. Cool. Looks like we saved some of that. But cedar lined closet, so that when the wealthy ladies would come in for their Marmon and Veelies, they'd have a place to put their fur coats. At least I assume that's what it's for. I have to double check the old plans and see if it's even noted on there. Maybe it was a later change. So the lower level here is kind of a gathering space, a couple hot desks, conference room. This was the creative solution for separating the mezzanine area from the showroom because our showroom team couldn't occupy any more space than they're already taking because the showroom was huge. And so we were able to shoehorn additional commercial space kind of into the middle of the building here by utilizing this solid wall construction, glass in the upper half, and then full glass here, so that visibility between the two spaces, which were always connected historically,
was maintained. This is the stair that we recreated from the historic plans, including some of this wall panel detail. Unfortunately, because it was an entirely new stair, we had to meet modern code, so the railing heights are taller than they should be for a historic stair, but there wasn't an exception we can get for that. And let's go up, take a look at the offices on the mezzanine. Up here on the mezz level, this is the only remaining area of the original railing, so we had to keep this in place. There actually was a time where there was a mistake made and this was disassembled and thrown in the dumpster, but thankfully I caught up quickly enough and they cobbled it back together, and you can see where the original railing height would be compared to the modern newel posts we had to put in. That's an original wall that we did have spec for removal but ended up keeping. Evan is in the former receptionist's office for Mr. Monroe, Charles Monroe's office, hence the Monroe Motor Car Company building. And this fireplace was still here. Thankfully, no idiots painted it over, but they did rip off the mantelpiece, so we kind of put a simplified version of what seemed to have been there. And those little brackets kind of line up with the ghost lines of what was missing. And now this is kind of a multi-function office space with the replica casement windows looking over the showroom area. And now we're at the other end of the mezzanine in what is Rich's office, and we kept the safe here, which is pretty neat. Carry safe, made in Buffalo. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least open these up so you could appreciate how cool this is. So this is the showroom from the mezzanine level, which is just, I mean, it's so different than what it was. This is a cool perspective too, to be up here at the clear story window level. It also helps to give you a sense this heavy duty cornice here at the mid-level. We've got our modern lighting in here, so at nighttime this lights up the upper level, which kind of carries over into the arches of the ceiling and just looks like this absolute beautiful jewel box. There was hard piped lighting conduit in here, so we know that originally it was treated that way. We just upgraded to LEDs. So this is what it'd be like if you're coming in from the main residential entry. This used to be an overhead garage door opening, but we converted it to a pedestrian entry. Got this big lobby, mailboxes, package shelf, again, same high ceilings throughout. This is the one I refer to as the party unit. A lot of the units are somewhat odd sizes and very differing square footages, but this one is huge. So this is the back corner of the Monroe Building. This would have been a service area, just like most of the interior. And then on the other side of that wall is 1040 Lafayette, which was a separate service building where the family lived above the shop. But this living room is absolutely enormous. You've got this big window on the back wall here. One of the other things we wanted to make sure, unlike some other buildings that have big factory windows, they're not operable. I can't imagine anybody living in a space where you don't have an operable window. So each one of these has at least one opening. You know, the view really isn't much to sniff at. Thankfully, when the vines grow in on the fence, you're not really looking at the playground equipment of the school next door, but it still brings in a fair amount of natural light. And same idea, we really didn't want to coat all of that kind of baked in, worn look of the masonry walls. So rather than just painting it gallery white and leaving it boring, we decided to keep it kind of raw. We sealed it so it doesn't dust off. This is another one of these ghost windows. When I came in here during construction, they were actually framing to cover it like they did that with that window, which actually makes sense because the wall runs into it. But this was going to get covered up, and I had asked them to take the framing down because it's just a really neat feature. You know, there's a brick wall on the other side of it, so it's not like it's just between you and the other unit. You've got a glass window. There's a full brick wall on the back side. But they were saying, well, where are you going to hang pictures? You have this massive salon wall. So if somebody's got an art collection or an aspiring art collection, that would be a great unit to have. The big steel beam hanging out here in the ceiling, the exposed joist, just like all the other units. The silver stuff is the new ductwork, if you can't tell already, but the black stuff, this is really interesting. I might have mentioned this in the previous video. That's the original exhaust ductwork. So when they had cars here in the service area, and this is one of the only sections that still have the little snoot that comes down that you hook the flexible hose to, when they were running the cars in here, you know, you don't want to poison yourself with exhaust fumes. So they had this system that had a huge fan, exhaust fan to pull all the fumes out of the building on the roof. That was long gone, but all of the ducting was still here. So I thought it was a cool little remnant in the units that it ran through. We kept it. I don't know if anybody will really know what it is when they move into the unit unless we tell them or unless they have some knowledge about old dealership buildings. It's not dissimilar to how modern dealerships do it, but that's from 1920. And then this is kind of a cool aspect. We didn't want to run these walls above the kitchen soffit and in the hallway all the way to the ceiling because, well, why would you? It's just dead space. So you kind of have this interesting effect that happens where the soffit carries through at the same level through the hallway, and you still have all of that height up there. And same idea, if you didn't have enough storage as it was, and this unit has a lot of storage, you've got stuff you can throw up there, hopefully plants. This is the only, is it the only? It's one of the only 2-bed, 2 full bath units. Most of them are 1-bedroom units. We don't have any studios. Utility closet, not all that exciting, but again, more room for storage. The units were originally envisioned to have in-unit laundry, but unfortunately the costs were just too significant, so we moved towards having 2 common area laundries. But we never changed the size of the closets, so accidental additional storage. Now in the back here, you're pretty deep into the building. I mean, your only source of light from a regular window is all the way at the end of the unit. So we pop this skylight up here just so you can get light towards the interior of the unit. And let's see. Yeah, okay, good. We've got a nice sunny day here. It's a little bit overcast, but it's still really bright in this hallway thanks to that skylight with no lights on. So same thing, polished concrete floors. There's no basement under us, so they stay pretty reasonably warm. And then these are the 2 bedrooms. Same idea, borrowed light window, trying to pull some light in from the big window in the living space. There's a covered up window opening. There's our original brick wall, all in its patina glory. There's another aspect of that old exhaust venting system, big closet, storage area up above if you want it. Second full bathroom's in there, and then this is the second bedroom. And, same idea. We didn't try to reinvent the wheel with every one of these units, even though the layouts are a little bit different, but full height ceilings, exposed masonry wall, exposed concrete floors, and hopefully lots of suitable storage for people. Go check out some of the other units. Here's one of the smaller units. This is in the building that we refer to as the Long Boy, which is long and skinny, and the former home of the parts department for the Ford dealership. So this is just a 1-bedroom unit. I think this is under or around 500 square feet. Ceilings are about 14, 13 feet. Open joists because we insulated the roof from the top so we can keep that look. Nice galley kitchen. Big tall windows. As you might remember from the last video, the sill height is actually like right where the outside ground is. So most of this unit is actually, the lower third is below ground. So it retains heat really well. And you've got these big brand new insulated glass windows in this unit. Long or short but tall hallway. Original concrete here. We ground, polished, and sealed it, which we did through the rest of the building. And then same idea. You've got steel beam that's up there, these cool globe fixtures. Got that borrowed light transom to pull in light from the windows just so the bedrooms aren't pitch black since they're kind of in the middle of the unit here. And then all of the storage space you could possibly want. So we have bike storage, and this is kind of like our on-site maintenance room. It's got this operable overhead door that goes out into the courtyard. So this could be an area where people would store their seasonal tables and chairs and heaters for the courtyard. And this was one thing that I required us to have, which is a dog wash station. This brick wall brings us into 1040 Lafayette. So this is the side wall that we cut into. You can see the wall is very thick because it's the outside wall of the Monroe Building and the outside wall of 1040. Left the brick exposed in the hallway, sealed it. And then this is where you used to come in when this was the service building that was separate from the Monroe Building. We've got a fake door here because we didn't need a second door when you've got one right there. And then we actually were able to salvage this original stained wood millwork observation window that used to look into the service area beyond. So kind of a nice little remnant, including this window that used to look into the bathroom. That's why it's got that privacy glass with that pattern on it. And I think we have one unit in here that's still vacant. Let's take a look. It should be 102. 103 is one of the other 2-bedroom units. 102 should be vacant. Good, it's unlocked. All right, so we're still in 1040. There's nothing above us in this unit. It is a two-story building, but the second floor only exists under the front portion. So same thing, a lot of natural light, exposed brick, big windows that are actually operable. Let's see if I can get this one to work. There you go. They are on a limiter. I think you can only open it 4 inches, but you know, if you're burning food like I often am, it's nice to be able to open up a window. And of course, you know, just having a nice breeze. We've got our garbage tote enclosure out there. So again, it's not a bad view, but it's not a great view. At least you're not looking at a dumpster or anything. But this is a neat unit. We don't have the joists exposed here. I was mistaken earlier. We don't have them exposed here because the second floor does exist up above here. And we had to have fire rated ceilings separating the lower from the upper. Closet here, closet there, bathroom, utility closet, another closet. There is no lack of storage. Here's the bedroom. You get another big window, more exposed brick. And hopefully it looks pretty bright in the videos. It's bright here in person, but I didn't turn any lights on in this unit. You know, the white walls obviously help, but these windows are just absolutely huge. And again, we didn't want to paint these walls. We didn't want to clean them up. We kind of wanted that long time aesthetic that took, you know, basically a century to get to that point left, because why mess with it? It looks good. A lot of people are interested in unique spaces, and frankly, so many apartments, even in old buildings, look the same. They get boring, so we didn't want to be boring. And I think we can go show you the upstairs units here, which are really neat. So we'll go up the stairs. The people that actually built it had a service station, you know, car repair, and they lived above the shop. So up here was originally one apartment. And funny enough, they actually had 2 doors just like this at the landing. So it actually made it easy to split this one apartment into 2. This one should still be empty. Good, it is. Okay. This one's really neat. So I'll probably throw some photos around this point in the video just to give you a sense of how bad this building really was. I mean, this probably should have been torn down, but of course, at the end of the day, we are preservationists, so we really didn't want to have to do it. But this thing has basically been completely rebuilt. It's really just the perimeter walls that we were left with and the framing. But we were able to salvage some things. You know, the original windows are still here. They've been refinished. They've been restained. The casings were remade. This is a cute one. I think this one works. There we go. You know, nice view of the roof from here. But you can see down Main Street from here, and a big window to let some natural air in addition to the double hung windows still working. We actually have the original drawings for this building. This little nook off of the dining room, it probably had a china cabinet in it at some point, but they did plan to have a stair here that would have gone up to a roof patio, and that was shown in the 1933 drawings. These bookcases and the archways were totally toast. All the plaster finishes in here had to be replaced. The floors had to be replaced, but we've got brand new red and white oak hardwood. We were thankfully able to salvage the bookcases, so these have been reframed in the reframed openings, but these are the original doors. You can see some of the alligatoring on the original finish. They do still open. Great storage, you know, knickknacks, or actually books, depending on the tenant's preference. Both of them work. You got the kitchen. That soffit detail, which continues over the cabinet, this is kind of a little subtle reference for preservation requirements. That soffit detail relates to a wall that used to be here. This room used to be the dining room for the apartment, and in order to convert the single apartment into 2 new units, we had to make some changes. You know, we had to close off the front from the back. We had to take down some walls, thankfully very few. But in order to give some slight reference to the fact that there was a wall here, we implemented this soffit detail. Again, will anybody really notice it? I doubt it. But it's those subtle little details that if people are weird like me and other preservationists, they might pick up on and go, hey, I think I know what happened here. So this bathroom is kind of funny. You've got 2 windows, and then there's your toilet. So if you want the POV of what it's like, all right, we're going to do this. Okay, you're on the toilet. Here's your view. get a whole view of the neighborhood, and the neighborhood has a whole view of you. So I would think most tenants would probably put up curtains, but maybe we'll get somebody that is not most tenants. Hopefully, for the neighborhood's sake, they do put up curtains. So that's this unit. Oh, almost forgot the bedroom. Same thing, original windows. Got the trim that's all been remade and stained based on the originals. Little closet here. I think I have a photo of the pre-condition here. This was really funny. In this closet, there was a chimney. It basically ran along that back wall. And the deterioration of this building was so bad, the chimney didn't continue down to the ground floor because right below us is where cars would drive in. So the chimney couldn't go to the first floor. So it just was held up by really simple 2x4 framing, which we didn't really want to spend too much time standing under for obvious reasons. And one day I came in here, and all of a sudden, our chimney that only ever existed on the second floor was on the first floor. It literally broke free of the framing underneath it and slid straight down. I've never seen a failure so perfect and so spectacular. All right, and this is the back half of what used to be the single apartment up here, which is now its own one-bedroom apartment, just like the front. This was in bad condition in a different way. The room I'm stepping into now is the bedroom, but what was here was this poorly built sunroom, which I couldn't even begin to describe how poorly framed it was from underneath. It was another part of the building that when you're on the first floor, you did not want to spend too much time underneath. It actually collapsed into the first floor. When we took over the building, there was this whole conglomeration of poorly framed structures that we just lovingly referred to as shantytown. And I know I've got photos, I'll throw them in here too, but they were just really poorly built. They weren't properly supported. They were falling into the building. Like I said, this thing was a real demolition candidate. Same idea here. There was a wall here. If I remember correctly, the room you walk into here used to be the kitchen. And now the kitchen's over there. But this wall defined the kitchen, and then the other bedrooms were back here. Again, big closet, almost a walk-in. Pretty good size. Again, not lacking for storage in this place. And then this is what would have been the other half of the sunroom. After it collapsed, obviously there wasn't anything we can do to fix it, so we rebuilt it. I think we made it maybe 2 feet bigger, just so these rooms were a little bit better. These aren't the original windows, they're replacements, historically appropriate replacements, matching casing, same stained finish. I guess technically this would be considered the dining room or the living room since it's off the kitchen, although you do have a combined living kitchen, so this could be work from home office. I mean, it would really be great. You'd have your own separate space. The courtyard. This was our first commercial tenant signed up, Christiana. She operates Fairy Blonde Leather Salon, and she specializes in coloring, blonding, anything hair related. She does a really great job. Does weddings, all the stuff you'd expect in a salon space. This used to be the former service area. This concrete floor is entirely new. This area was pretty haggard on the floor, and there was actually an old hydraulic lift pit, which ended up being a little bit of an environmental issue. So we had that fun little surprise that we had to take care of. But we dug it up. They filled some 50-gallon drums. The professional environmental containment people did that, obviously. Filled it, took it to the appropriate disposal sites, and then we dug up the rest of the concrete and poured a new one, kind of cut the joints in a similar location to where they were. And like everybody else in the courtyard, she has this overhead door that operates. So in the warmer weather months like we've got today, she can open it up, have the chairs outside, spill out into the courtyard. Then just back of house over here, bathroom, closet. But same as all the other spaces in the building, we insulated the roof, so we could keep all of the joists exposed and have that cool industrial look. So let's go see some of the other spaces while we're here. Now we're in our second space on the courtyard. This is our last and final commercial tenant to get signed up. So this is the final space to get finished. Same idea, the industrial aesthetic throughout. They opted for white ceilings in here, which I think I might actually like a little better. But we've got the original steel columns with those huge rivets just floating into space. This way you know that this place was an industrial area before this was more service station. So this is movement. They do infrared yoga, so hot, sweaty yoga. They're not quite open yet, but they will be soon. So if you're into hot yoga and your general fitness, give them a look on the internet there, movement, and they'll be probably posting their hours pretty soon and opening up. I think this was the final round of work that needed to get done, was done this week, and they look like they're pretty much ready to go. We got our bathroom over there, closet. This little room over here is our sprinkler room. There was no way to get around having that. And then same idea, another overhead door that opens. So if the heat outside ends up being equivalent to the heat inside with the big heat panels here, maybe they'll spill out into the courtyard in the warm or cold weather months. I don't know. So we'll see how they use this space.
We can't get into the barber shop today, but this is the last commercial space. This is one of our 2 food vendors. This is Manna Culinary Group. They relocated from a previous space they were in over on Northland Avenue. And this is space that was going to be used for graduates of the West Side Bazaar. That's why there's 2 food counters over there. But unfortunately, as plans often do, that changed. Now Manna is just the singular tenant in the space, and usually this place is humming with people, but they are closed today. You'd be lucky to get a seat either inside or out. Outside, they actually do have 4 dining tables, which often have the umbrellas out too to protect you from the sun. But same idea as the other spaces, this garage door can be opened in fair weather, and the function of this space can spill to the outside area. And that's a wrap on everything we've got going on here at the Monroe Building. Thanks for coming along.